friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Gleeful Gardens, Fairy Friends, and Bugs and Kisses. And I'll also be using the Garden Party 6x6 paper pad by Pebbles. I've stamped my images out on some Copic friendly cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers today. I'm starting with this large grass image, and I'm using YG61, YG63, and YG67. I started with my YG61 and just colored in the entire thing, and now I'm coming in with the YG63 and mapping out where I want my shadows to go. And then I'm going to darken those up with the YG67. Normally I do color darkest to lightest, but since I wasn't sure quite how I wanted to color this image, I decided to play it safe and do lightest to darkest, since it's a lot easier to remove the lighter color or add in dark than it is to take it away. So now I'm going to go back down with the YG63 and then a little bit of that YG61 on the tips, just to blend everything nice and smooth. And then I'll use that same combo to color in the smaller cluster of grass as well. This time I did start with the YG67 since it's real simple to figure out where to put the shadows, and then just blended with the YG63 and the YG61. I wanted the stems and leaves of my other two flowers to be just a little bit different shade of green, so I'm using G20, G24, and G28 for those. I'm adding some shadows down towards the base of the leaves and the bottom of the stem, and also where the stems kind of bow a little bit under the weight of the blossoms with that G28, and then I'm going to blend that out with the G24. There's only so much blending you can do on the thinner parts, but I'm just trying to do my best to squeeze in at least two shades in there. And then I will come in with that G20, which is much lighter, and that's going to really add a nice highlight to the tips of the leaves especially, and a little bit on the stem as well. For my daisy stem and leaves, I'm going to color those the exact same way. And by the way, I'm just going to be coloring the images that are right side up on the sheet of paper. The images that are upside down are doubles, and I'm going to color them in the exact same way as I'm doing these. So I'm just going to save some time and color each image once on screen. Next, I'm going to bring in some yellow shades. I'm using Y13, Y15, and Y17. And I'm going to use that to color in the bee's body and the top of my daisy. So I started with the Y17 first. I'm doing a shadow on the right side of the bee's body since he's going to be kind of tilted in that direction. And then I'm also doing it on the right side of the daisy as well. So I'm trying to keep it consistent and have the shadows in the same place. Then I'm going to bring in the BG11 and BG10 to color in the petals of my daisy. I want them to look nice and white, so I'm not going to color in completely, but I definitely want there to be a little bit of definition there. I'm also going to use those same two shades to color in my little well, they could be bluebells or whatever you want them to be. They kind of remind me of Lily of the Valley, which is one of my favorite flowers, so I color them white like that. For the snails' bodies, I'm going to use E41, E43, and E44. And I'm starting with the E44, and I'm doing the shadow kind of in the direction that they're facing. Because I thought that the shell that's on their back is so large that it would cast a shadow in that direction. So I'm adding the E44 on the top edge and then underneath the shell as well. I'm blending out with the E43, also coloring in their antenna with the E43. And then I'll blend out the rest of their faces and a little bit on the underside of their bodies with the E41. For their shells, I took away everything except the E44 and then added in the E47 and E49. So I'm outlining the curve of their shell with the E49 first, both the big and the small. Just being really careful and using the very tip of my marker because there's not a whole lot of room, especially on the little guy. And then I'm going to blend out with the E47, also making sure just to save a little bit of room for that third color so that it looks more dimensional. I want it to look as if there's actually, you know, some kind of bumps and valleys on the shell as it winds around. And then I'll finish them off with that E44. So the lightest shade on their shell is also the darkest shade on their body, so they're going to match really well. And then I'll bring in the R20 to give them some rosy cheeks, both the snails and the bees. And that's just going to make them look nice and cute and also add just a teensy bit of an extra pop of color to the card. And now I can trim these out with the matching dies. I've also used the Lawn Fawn Stitch Journaling card die and the Grassy Borders die to cut out a piece of blue cardstock for my sky and then 2 panels of grass, a light and a dark. And that is also going to add a bit of dimension to my card to have those 2 tones of grass. I'm gluing the darker one down to my focal panel flat with some liquid glue. I'm using Tombow Mono liquid glue. So I'll just line that up and give that a second for the glue to adhere. And then I'm going to take a thin strip of foam tape to pop up the lighter panel up in front. And now I'm going to start adding in my images and setting my scene. I'm going to anchor the 2 sides of my focal panel with these large grasses. So I'll place one on the left and one on the right. It's kind of going to be the border edge of my garden. And then the flowers I'm actually going to stagger back and forth between the bottom and top grassy panel, and that's going to help my garden look nice and full. So I added the first one towards the front behind the lighter green grass, and I'm just making sure that I have that exactly where I want it. And then I will add a little more liquid glue to the back of the next one, and I'm going to tuck that one just a little bit offset and behind the darker green grass. And then I'll repeat the same steps with the daisies. I'm going to put the next one down in front, just making sure that it's not overlapping the other flowers too much. I'm also trying to stagger the heights of the flowers just a little bit so that they're not exactly the same. And then the last daisy I'm going to tuck in the back again. Since I put both of the larger grasses in the back, I'm going to add the 2 smaller ones in the front for balance. And then I just needed to decide where I wanted my snails to go. I had originally thought to put them on the right side, but I decided I actually liked them better on the left. So I popped those up with a little bit of foam tape up on the backs of their shells so that their body is flush with that popped up grass. And then I added my 2 little bees with foam tape as well. So here's where I had a little goof. I decided to stamp my sentiment, and I'm using the Hi There from Critters on the Savannah because I needed a really small sentiment. And I'm using Lawn Fawn's Merman ink, and I'm using an acrylic block instead of the Misty. And this just never seems to turn out well for me. I always felt like I was not a good stamper until I got the Misty. So I didn't like the way it stamped. It wasn't consistent all the way across with the ink color. So I just re-stamped that on a piece of white cardstock, and I was able to double stamp it using the Misty. And while I have my Misty out, I'm also going to go ahead and just stamp the inside of the card. I'm using the daisy image again, as well as the hummingbird, and then a little thanks sentiment also from Critters on the Savannah. So I used the everyday sentiment banners to trim out that little sentiment strip, and I'm going to just place that down right over top of my goofed up sentiment. And I think the white actually looks a little bit better anyway. I think it adds a little bit of something to the card. For my pattern papers, I've cut them down to the sizes that I wanted them to be. I have the floral print that is going to cover the entire front of the card. So it's 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches tall. Just going to smooth that into place. And then this piece here was 3 1/4 inches by 4, I believe. So I just added that green that I wanted to accent with. And then I wanted to a flag fishtail end in my little banner strip here. And this is where I had my second goof. So I trimmed it and I didn't like the way it looked. I wanted the inside corner of that flag end to completely cover the green. I thought it looked strange with it kind of overlapping both pieces of pattern paper. So I didn't have another strip that was the right length of this bee print, and I wanted to use the bees to tie it in. So I decided to repeat and kind of piece it together. That's because I knew that the focal panel would cover up that mistake. And I didn't learn my lesson. I didn't like the way that my fishtail looked. It was still too deep. So this time I got smart and used the Lawn Fawn Party Banners die to get a perfect fishtail edge, and it also gave me that cool stitching detail. So I'm just going to line that up on my card base, grab the focal panel to make sure that it's right where I want it, and then I can glue the remaining piece down right over top, make sure that it's nice and lined up. I did go ahead and trim off a little bit of it to remove any excess bulk, and that little bit of green that's showing through that little triangle is not going to even show once I get my focal panel in place. So I decided to go ahead and leave these mistakes in the video today and not edit them out, because I wanted you to see that you can mess up and you can still continue and have a card that looks, you know, like there was never any mistake at all in the end. And even if there is a little mistake that shows, you know, it's a handmade card, and I wouldn't stress about it. There's enough stress in life. We don't need to stress in crafting, right? So to finish the card off, I grabbed my favorite crystal stickles, and I'm going to add just a little bit as an accent. I'm going to do it on all of the little flowers, the daisies, and the bees' wings. I'll lift that up to the light so you can hopefully see all that pretty shimmer, and also give you another peek at the inside. And that is going to complete our card for today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would love to have you. If you have any tips on how you've fixed mistakes on your cards in the past, please leave them down in the comments below. I would love to read your suggestions. Here's 2 extra videos you may also enjoy, so hopefully those will tide you over until my next one. Until then, I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.